You are listening to Radio Maria Canada, a Catholic voice wherever you are. We now present the program Via Rua, hosted by Anna Rivera.
Hi everybody, welcome to Via Rua program today through Radio Maria, where we learn about God's breath, being a tender seeker that creates and upholds life from conception to natural death. Today we have David Gonzalez. He is the president or coordinator, you could say, for 40 Days for Life in Toronto. And this is very exciting because I know many of you guys are from Toronto. So welcome, David. How are you today?
Oh, I'm fine. Thanks.
We are so happy to have you on. And could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Oh, well, I grew up here in Toronto and I'm a teacher, a high school teacher, and I'm also a support worker for people with developmental disabilities.
Wow, I
Yeah.
didn't know that.
Oh,
Is
yeah.
that like a separate certification?
No, that's kind of just my side job. So I've been doing that for 10 years.
Wow.
So people with autism, Down syndrome, things like that.
That's really amazing. I know that sort of jobs really can be a bit draining in the sense that you always have to have like that sort of helping hand and be open to anything that could happen, especially when somebody has a disability. Because I know a lot of people tend to not want to have jobs like that because it's so demanding, if that's like a correct word to put it. Um, yeah, and I guess to
Yeah.
start off, yeah,
Well, yeah. I think a lot of people are scared because they don't want a job where they have to change diapers or help people in the shower. I remember my first month um, feeling sorry for the people I was taking care of and looking at them and thinking, oh, what a sad life. But that passed very quickly. And I soon came to realize that actually these guys are happier than we are, you know. Um, so, and then I've caught, and nowadays I don't even notice really the disabilities anymore. And the whole part about changing diapers or helping them in the shower, that I don't even notice that anymore. So it is a fulfilling job.
and a full-time teacher, high school teacher. So that's
Yeah.
you're doing a lot for society, and that's very inspiring. I'm already inspired. This is really good. But can you tell us? Because some of us are kind of already know what 40 Days for Life, but in your own words, can you tell us what 40 Days for Life is, and this sort of movement that has grown in Toronto?
Sure. 40 Days for Life started in Texas. And I guess really it's a prayer ministry. It's a pro-life ministry. Um, there are different kinds of pro-life ministries. I guess one important pro-life ministry is helping in a pregnancy resource center and helping to support women who find themselves in crisis pregnancies. Another type of pro-life ministry is simply offering prayers. And so that's what we do. We focus on the prayer side. And it's called 40 days because we spend 40 days praying outside or down the street from an abortion clinic. And the campaign in Toronto, it lasts 40 days, and we try to be there as often as we can from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. And we're just there to pray for an end to abortion, or for women who find themselves in crisis pregnancies, or perhaps for the staff at the abortion clinic. But really, it's a ministry of prayer, and we believe that prayer can make a difference.
And then how did you learn about 40 days? Like, what was your first exposure to 40
Oh,
days for life?
gee, I guess it was about 15 years ago. I went on uh, Net Canada. It's a Catholic youth organization,
Can
and
you
so I
tell us what NET stands for?
National Evangelization Teams. So it's a Catholic youth organization from Ottawa, and they have retreat teams. So I myself was on a retreat team, and we had a 12 passenger van. So I spent the year going across the country giving youth retreats at Catholic schools or parishes. And it was while I was on net that we spent a couple of days praying at the 40 Days for Life in Ottawa. So that was my whole net team. So there was 10 of us, and we were praying outside. I think it was the Morgentaler Abortion Clinic in downtown Ottawa. So that was where I first learned about net. Sorry, that was where I first learned about 40 days. But then, of course, about 5 years ago, there was that movie Unplanned. And that movie Unplanned is about the origins of 40 Days for Life and how it came to begin. And it was around that time that I got involved with 40 Days here in Toronto.
So
Yeah.
then you were reminded from praying outside in Ottawa. So then you're like, wow, it's here. So it
Mm-hmm.
was your first time praying outside in Toronto? That was
Yeah. Yeah, I always wanted to get involved with 40 Days in Toronto because I had that experience in Ottawa. But there were a few years where the Toronto campaign wasn't active. That was back when the bubble zone law was introduced. I think it was maybe around 10 years ago. So it used to be that we could pray right across the street from an abortion clinic. But about 10 years ago, they introduced this bubble law. And so now we have to be uh, about 150 meters down the street. And I guess when that happened, the Toronto 40 Days for Life campaign became inactive for a number of years, but then it started back up around the time that Unplanned movie came out.
I have two questions. So, what about the movie kind of prompted you to go back to 40 days? And then for the bubble zone laws, was
Mm-hmm.
that because 40 days, the people that were running it, do you think they were discouraged knowing that now they had to stand somewhere else? Do you, and I guess my other question would be like, do you know where they were standing before?
Yeah. So in Toronto, our 40 Days for Life campaign is near Dufferin and Lawrence. And we're kind of lucky because at Dufferin and Lawrence, there's a Catholic church called St. Charles Borromeo. And just down the street from St. Charles Borromeo, there's an abortion clinic. So they used to pray right across the street, just on the other side of the road. Um, and you're right. I guess when the bubble zone law came into effect, it sort of lost momentum. People thought, oh, now we have to be down the road. It's not the same. Um, but I think the movie got a lot of people interested in 40 Days for Life because 40 Days for Life does have a very like powerful origin story. So having to do with Abby Johnson, I think more and more people know about Abby Johnson now. She she was working at an abortion clinic in Texas, And it was the first, or one of the first, 40 Days for Life campaigns was at her abortion clinic. And over the course of that campaign, she made the decision to, well, to leave her abortion clinic and to stop working there. And not only did she leave her abortion clinic, and not only did she stop working there, but she got involved with 40 Days for Life, and which must have been a difficult decision, not just to change your mind about abortion, but also to leave your employment and to make yourself unemployed. And but if I remember correctly, the people at 40 Days for Life helped her to find another way of making an income. And Abby Johnson went on to become, one of the strongest pro-life voices in the United States. And the abortion clinic she was working at shut down. And that's not the only abortion clinic that's shut down after a 40 Days for Life campaign. It's funny because Abby Johnson and other people who used to work in abortion clinics will say that whenever there are people outside praying for an end to abortion, their numbers fall. People start to cancel their appointments. So, and perhaps that says something about the power of prayer.
Yes, which we so dearly lose faith on. It's also praying to have more faith in knowing that prayer does change minds and hearts and possibly culture. But I think specifically in that moment, where those parents, right, specifically also the father and the mother, are faced, hey, like I can just get rid of my baby because it's legal. There's no consequence of my action.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you say why do you think people say unplanned pregnancy or crisis pregnancy instead of saying, oh, they have a baby that's unwanted? Like why is it important to make that distinction?
Yeah. Well, I think it's important to acknowledge that some women do find themselves in a scary situation and they don't know what to do. Perhaps the father of the baby has abandoned them. Perhaps their parents are not being supportive. Um, but it's important to point out that there are these pregnancy centers that are there to help. So even though I'm involved with 40 Days for Life, one of the things I do, and my partner, by the way, so there are two leaders of the Toronto campaign. My friend is also leading this Toronto campaign with me, and we both volunteer at the St. Joseph's Center of Hope for Women, which is a place where if you're a woman and you're in a crisis pregnancy, you can come to the St. Joseph Center, which is here in Toronto, and there's someone to talk to you. There are baby supplies if you need baby supplies. There, counseling, that sort of thing. Of course, in Toronto, we also have the Sisters of Life, who offer the same services. Actually, there are a number of places you can go to in Toronto if you're pregnant and if you're afraid and if you don't know what to do. So with 40 Days for Life, our contribution is simply to pray for the women who find themselves in that situation. And if it ever happens, now it has happened that sometimes a woman in that situation sees us praying down the street from the pregnancy center and they come to us to talk to us. That has happened even in my own Toronto campaign. So when that happens, what we do is we either refer them to the Sisters of Life or to the St. Joseph's Center of Hope for Women.
How how far is the location between Dufferin and St. Lawrence? I think you said, how far is it compared to what it was before?
Oh, It's if I understand correctly, it's 150 meters. Now we're lucky though because, like I said, we have a Catholic church, so the church parking lot has become our new vigil location, which is good. But also because there's cameras, and often the church is open, so we can go inside to warm up if it's the winter time, or sometimes there's mass, so we can go inside for mass. Um, the other thing is around the corner, the Daughters of St. Paul have a bookstore. So
Yeah, that's
yeah,
beautiful.
so it's a convenient location for our vigil.
Sure. Yeah, praise God for that. I think maybe even, yeah, to look at the pros and cons of why the Lord has allowed, the location to be moved, but I'm just, it's, I'm not shocked, but I'm just grateful and in awe of God's good work in the sense that women are still coming and pointing you guys out and seeing you guys and still asking for help. Obviously, we hope that it was all of them that didn't have to go into an abortion clinic, because it goes to show that we're not there to judge others. We're not there to demonize other people that probably are post-abortive, have already taken that decision. Have you had anybody that is post-abortive and is looking or just wants to talk about what happened? Where would you refer them?
Oh yeah, I remember 2 years ago there was a young woman. Actually, she wasn't post. Sorry, she wasn't. Okay, so we have some volunteers who have had abortions, and they're coming out and praying with 40 Days for Life. Sorry, the woman I was thinking of, there was a woman who was going to have an abortion, and people were pressuring her to have an abortion, but at the end she didn't, and so she decided to keep her child, um, even though it was a very messy situation. And in the end, they had to take the child away from her because uh, like I said, it was a very difficult situation. But I remember she came and she was praying with us on a
Wow.
number of occasions. Yeah, but that's a woman who everyone was telling her she should have had an abortion, and it was a difficult situation, but she decided to keep the child anyway. And in the end, they took the child away from her, which was very difficult. But um, you know, she at least made the right decision to have the child. Mhm. Yeah.
That's hard. I think I, in my own journey right now, um, yeah, I am working for kind of like you could call like a social services sort of agency, and it's hard when all the odds are against this person, poverty, housing, all these things are against them, and they still say yes to life, which I think it's such a beautiful testament to to anybody that thinks otherwise. Even here
Yeah.
in
And
Hamilton, yeah, go ahead. You're gonna say something.
no, no, I was going to say that she loves, her child was taken away from her. She still gets to visit the child. The child's with a family member, but she loves that child so much. So she would, always be talking about her. She would, come out and pray for other women in that situation. It was very moving.
That is very beautiful, um, because it's like that redemptive love of being able to, yes, admit, maybe I'm not in the best position to be able to take care of this life, but somebody else out there will be able to. I'm sure. I actually don't even know the stats, but I know there's a wait list, even just for any parents, especially with the infertile statistics going up. There is a need, where we are using IVF instead of having all these children that we could have, because we already do in Canada, and giving them a chance with adoptive parents. But we don't. We kind of assume abortion is the answer. But yeah, but I was gonna say that
You're
Recent.
right. That people always make these poor arguments. You'll often hear people saying, "Oh, but if we don't have the abortion, they'll have a terrible life. They'll end up in foster care." Now, it's true that there are lots of kids in foster care, but that's because the kids who are in foster care, oftentimes they came from an abusive situation. Perhaps their parents were alcoholics or something happened, but there are no babies in foster care. In fact, there are thousands of couples who are infertile and not capable of having a child of their own and would love to adopt a baby. The problem is there are no babies to be adopted. There are children to be adopted, but I guess a lot of couples think, well, I don't want to adopt a child like that because a child like that came from a difficult circumstance. And I don't know if I can manage a situation like that, which is a different topic. But as far as babies going into foster care, babies don't go into foster care. There's a need to adopt babies. It's just that there are none available to be adopted.
And it is like I do want to recognize to any of the listeners, like this is a very sensitive issue, especially if you know there's grandparents out there that want to have grandkids, if there's parents out there that want to have their own kids. But I think because I was reading a testimony of a mother that it was still trying, you know, they're like, we haven't been able to prayerfully accept the fact that we're gonna have to adopt. So we still want to, you know, go through neuropathic technology, do all the things, hormone um, replacement therapy, I think it is. So do all the things before visiting the idea of adopting. But I think since it's so limited, it's not as accessible. And it should. And another thing is just talking about it. Like I think even here in this program, talking about, you know, guys, there's adoption. Like that should be an option, which kind of rhymes. But it's like it's very. And then even to that, to add to that, what I was gonna say is that this past week when I was praying here at the Hamilton Vigil site, there was a lady that was really upset. She was so upset. Like I could see her from far away and I could see that she was not happy. She's like, I don't want to talk to you like I talked to you last time. And I said, yes, you did. But she was basically very hurt in the sense that she kept saying, oh, like, why do you have pray to an abortion where I had one, but it wasn't because I wanted to have one. It was because it was medically necessary. And why do you want people to be stillbirth? Like, why do you want women to have this inside of them? And I was like, I do not want that. And you know, now looking back, I think I should have been way more empathetic. I should have been like, I'm sorry that happened to you, instead of, because I think again, it's like the evil one overtaking the conversation. It's like, no, like I need to be right, she needs to be right, we both need to be right, versus I'm gonna empathize with you and I'm just gonna say I'm sorry that it happened to you. I'm not trying to make a point. I'm not trying to be right. I'm not trying to debate you. I'm just gonna say I'm sorry that this happened to you. And I totally forgot to say that. But I think I'm bringing it up because there's this argument, right? That they would say, you know, to have this abortion was medically necessary. And then that's where, and I don't know, David, you can tell me how your hot take on this, but basically, if we are to say that abortion is medically necessary, what does that entail? And then for me, what I was trying to tell this lady on the street, I was trying to tell her that the abortion she had was not an induced abortion. It wasn't something that
Mhm.
she went out of her way, booked an appointment, and was like, yes, I want to have this done on me because I don't want to have this baby. There's many medical reasons, and that's not induced abortion. This is like another, and I don't know if you know the actual term, but there's other terminology.
Uh,
But because
yeah.
that was written, she thought it was that.
Um, it's. I guess it's possible she had. I think it's called an uptopic pregnancy, although I might be mispronouncing that. It's when the zygote gets stuck in the fallopian tubes, and so the part of the fallopian tubes where the zygote is stuck gets removed. Um, I'm not sure if I would really call that. strictly speaking, an abortion. Um, because that's a situation where if nothing is done, both the mother and the unborn child are going to die. Um, but if we're talking about later in the pregnancy, certainly later in the pregnancy, there's never really Dr. Anthony Levatino speaks about this. Dr. Anthony Levatino is someone who used to be an abortion doctor, but now is like a pro-life activist, and he has a lot of great videos. For example, on YouTube. And he explains that if we're talking about late in the pregnancy, certainly abortion is never medically necessary, because even if there's some kind of complication, it's much easier to have just a C-section to remove the baby like that than to have an abortion. C-sections are actually faster than abortions when we're talking late in the pregnancy. But anyway, that's my understanding of it. But if a woman has an ectopic pregnancy, I'm not sure that that's strictly speaking an abortion.
Yeah, and I think it's yeah, and that's what I was trying to kind of communicate to this lady. There has to be an intention where we're trying to dismember this zygote, dismember this fetus, and I think zygote becomes before fetus. So that's the development. If anybody's listening again, that is the development stages of what the baby goes through before it's 9 months. And at zygote, I think it's like up to 7 weeks. I might be wrong, but
Yeah,
yeah,
I think it's zygote, embryo, fetus.
if the baby's stuck in the fallopian tube, like what David said, both are gonna die. So we have to save a life, and that is medically necessary. But in this certain circumstance, it's not that the doctor or I want to say the operation or the gynecologist is going in and ripping apart the baby, because it's very different. Like, you're removing the zygote because you have to, versus abortion is dismembering this baby in very gruesome ways.
Yeah.
Is there any other conversations you've had that you kind of carry with you, or that you have recently that you might want to share?
Well, like I said before, there are different pro-life ministries. So there's volunteering in a pregnancy resource center. There's 40 Days for Life, which is mostly prayer. But there are some pro-life ministries that focus on like changing hearts and minds, or debate, or street activism. So here in Canada, we have what's it called? The Canadian Centre for Bioethical Reform. And they actually go out on the street and debate people, or that's not really what 40 Days is about. Now, sometimes we find ourselves debating people, even though we didn't sign up for it. We signed up to pray, but sometimes people walk up to us and want to debate. So
Like me, the others.
yeah,
But
but
again, I think, yeah, yeah, go ahead.
I think if someone is listening and they're interested in 40 Days for Life, I think they should know that this isn't really a debate ministry. It's a prayer ministry. Sometimes people might come up to us and want to debate, but you don't have to. We're really just here to pray. Now, in my case, when people want to debate, I do debate them, even though that's not really uh, what I'm focused on in this particular ministry.
But David,
There,
I
there
would
are,
I would say, because at debate, I think I would use that terminology when the other person doesn't want to talk to you, and then
yeah,
I have to take that as a signal and like remember to be like, I'm sorry that happened to you, or I'm sorry you feel that way, versus this is why I'm right. And I'm saying this because there was two youth the other day, I think it was the week before this week, like a week ago now. They came, they saw our signs, they walked away. They're like, "Good for you. Like, are you guys anti-abortion or pro-abortion?" We're like, "Anti," and they just looked like it was like a guy and a girl. Um, or I should say a guy and a lady, sorry. A guy and a
Mhm.
lady. And they looked at it and they were like, oh no, we're not about. So they walked away. And then we kept praying. But then in my mind, I made a mental note because it seemed like they had lots of questions. But I'm like, Lord, if it's in you, like they'll come back, they'll ask the questions. And lo and
Yeah.
behold, they came back. I think they went to a food store, did whatever they have to. I think they ate, and they're like, wait. They came back and they're like, wait, we have some questions. And I thought it was very beautiful because if somebody has a disposition to talk to you, I think that is very healthy. And I think, like you're saying, David, I would encounter myself and engaging in this conversation versus somebody that's closed off. I should take that away as a signal to kind of just try to be empathetic, and that's it. Like, I'm not being called to tell them why abortion is wrong. I'm being called to love on them versus somebody that, yeah, literally they have questions like, okay, like, and that was the first question the youth had. She said, why are you pro-life? And then lo and behold, near the end of the conversation, I kind of spoke to them and I said, are you guys, because it seemed like they were dating, I'm like, are you guys sexually active? And they said yes. But they were very awkward and they're like, why are you asking this? And I'm like, I'm asking this because if you guys ever get into a situation like we just had spoken about, you get into a crisis pregnancy, you're not done school, you're trying to finish high school, all these things are happening, there is help. There's maternity centers. And they were shocked. They were like, what? That exists? And I was like,
Yeah.
yes, that exists.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of people, I guess, don't know about that. Um, yeah. Sometimes we find yeah, even though it's a prayer ministry, sometimes people are going to approach us and want to engage in conversation with us. And I suppose if you're comfortable engaging in that conversation, you can. Now, sometimes I think of someone like my mom, because my mom participates in 40 Days for Life. But if someone were to approach my mom and want to have a conversation, my mom would feel intimidated. She wouldn't know what to say. She wouldn't be comfortable. So I don't think if you're doing 40 days, you don't have to have these conversations. If you're not comfortable, you can just focus on prayer. But if you are comfortable, and remember, we have to sign a statement of peace, so we're not there to be aggressive. But if you can have these conversations politely, peacefully, with wisdom and understanding, then I would say
Amen.
go for it.
Wisdom, understanding. And I think I, that's one of the reasons, well, there's so many reasons, right? The power of prayer that is so beautiful because the power of prayer is saying, I don't need to speak to anybody. I can just pray, give this back to God, and He's going to do whatever He has to do with our prayers because we are praying and we are having faith in His word. So I think that specific part is so beautiful and is so humbling. But then the other part is where, yes, if somebody has questions, to be able to have a sane debate because I think in our society right now there's so many little opportunities to just disagree with somebody. I don't know if you know
Mm-hmm.
what I'm trying to say, David, because you tell somebody, yeah, you know what? I think, I like dark chocolate ice cream. And then because you like dark chocolate ice cream, there's this whole trajectory of why don't you agree with me and you should like vanilla chocolate and why don't you like vanilla. So and then it just becomes an argument and there's no,
Mm-hmm.
our society becomes this sort of very delicate, like we all become very delicate, we don't talk to one another, we're on our phones all the time, and it's
Mm-hmm.
this echo chamber. So it's just very beautiful to be able to build a culture where we can disagree but still have a conversation.
Yeah, I think so too. And often people are surprised when they actually start talking to us and realize that we're not the caricatures that they imagined. They're often surprised. But what you said is true. I think we're becoming more divided as a society. Perhaps it's the fault of our social media. Because, like you said, if someone has an opinion, they can just find YouTube videos or articles that agree with them, and they can live in an echo chamber, and they might not never um, read a contrary point of view or encounter a contrary point of view expressed intelligently until they come and perhaps meet us and try to have a conversation with us.
And then somebody could say, well, you guys, like, don't you guys live in an echo chamber? And I think, as somebody that has thought about this a lot, and even with 40
Yeah.
days, I just see so much hurt, especially from the people that are very rude. They kind of put up their middle finger, or they say nasty stuff. They say nasty, but they walk away. Thanks be to God that they walk away,
Yeah.
because they're not gonna stand there. Or we have had counter protests. The other day, it was funny. Actually,
Oh,
it was just
really?
happening this Friday, um, or Thursday. I can't remember. But somebody came, like two students from the university across the street. They came. They had a sign: "Abortion is healthcare." And then we
Mm-hmm.
literally, it was like 5 seconds, and then we were finished the rosary. Like, we were just ending prayer, and I was like,
Oh,
"Sorry, guys, like, we're done." But then it's like, we're obviously going to be exposed to the counter argument all the time, and then we kind of have to put ourselves, like you said, David, if you're comfortable, be like, okay, next time if somebody approaches me, how can I respond to their question? How
you
can
know,
I go ahead?
I have a theory about that. Because you're right, we do sometimes get middle fingers, or we do sometimes get people rolling down their window in their car to scream at us. Um, Actually, we get more thumbs up than middle fingers, but we do get middle fingers. And the theory I have is that the people who swear at us, yell at us, give us the middle fingers, those are probably the people who have had abortions themselves, or someone close to them has had abortion, and so they're having trouble. Um, they're having trouble dealing with the emotions that that event has caused caused in them. And you know, well, think about it. There's 100,000 people who have abortion in this country every year. You multiply that by what, 30 years? That's what, 3 million people who have had abortion. But then if you add the their partners who supported them in having an abortion, their friends who supported them in having an abortion, there are millions of people in this country who have been directly involved in abortion, and they don't like to think that they participated in murdering their own child. So obviously that's going to bring up very difficult emotions. And I think that that also explains, sometimes if you're pro-life, you might get frustrated because you're making such simple logical arguments, and you're not getting anywhere with some people with these simple logical arguments. And I think the reason is, for them, it's not about logic. Logic scares them because the more logical we are, it's like the more we're convincing them that, hey, you murdered your own kid. And maybe they're not emotionally ready to deal with that. And so they respond with middle fingers or swearing at us. And so maybe in that case, perhaps prayer is even more effective than arguments. Arguments are just going to scare them. But maybe what they're going through is like a spiritual battle. They're not ready to face the reality of that event they were involved with. Um, and so maybe
Yeah,
the best thing is to pray for them.
and I think, yes, that's what also scares people from coming to pray to the site, to know that they're going to be faced with, rudeness. But blessed are those who are persecuted, right? That's one thing. But then the other thing I've also learned, and I agree with you wholeheartedly, that these men and women are seeking, I think, and hopefully, and that's the prayer, right? The beginnings of healing, and potentially being able to accept what happened. And because that's kind of like a bad habit, we need to accept what happened, or accept what's going on, in order for us to come into terms emotionally of, I did this, then there has to be some reparation. And I
Yeah.
think we are that reminder in society right now. which praise be to God that we are doing it through Him, because this is not our own doing, this is all His. Do you have any advice for anybody that feels a bit scared or is questioning whether to come or not?
To 40 days? Oh, um, yeah, I mean, I can understand why someone would be nervous because we're not just praying down the street from an abortion clinic, but we're also holding signs. I guess I forgot to mention that. We're holding signs that say, we can help you, or we're holding signs that say, we're praying to end abortion. And if it's your first time, you might be afraid. Oh, um, you know, because people are driving by, they see you holding the sign. Maybe someone's going to give you the middle finger. Um, well, I would say it's better to come with a friend at first. And even me, when it's the beginning of a campaign and I haven't done it for a few months and it's my first time, you feel a little bit uncomfortable. You're at the side of the road, everyone can see you, you're praying. But after a while, you know what happens? It's, you don't notice it anymore. Kind of like what I said about changing the diapers. You know, when it was my first month at the job, I was very aware that I was changing someone's diaper, someone with developmental disabilities. After a while, you're on autopilot. You don't even notice it anymore. So nowadays, when I go to pray at the side of the road, I'm not even all that aware of the people driving by. I'm kind of just focused on my prayers. Um, but if you're afraid, come with a friend, come with a group of friends. I guess that would be my advice.
And I guess one last question. Were you ever afraid, David? I guess you kind of mentioned it, like you feel uncomfortable, but were you ever tempted or felt like, you know what, like I really don't want to do this? Because even I think now you're leading the 40 days. So how did it come to be that you were like a volunteer
Yeah.
and then your yes became a bigger yes?
Not everyone's afraid. You're right. I was never really that afraid, but I remember one time I brought a group of students from the high school I was working at. They were all boys. Man, they
Wow.
weren't afraid at all. They were standing at the side of the road with their signs. They were dancing. They were trying to get the cars to honk their horns. Oh man, they were loving it. And whether someone gave them a thumbs up or a middle finger, they just loved it. They were not afraid at all. So, um, yeah, yeah, perhaps it depends on your temperament. Yeah,
Hmm. So Jesus was all for perfectly. So I guess the prayer would be, and the prayer for all the listeners would be to let's pray for our unbelief, because we don't have enough faith in the prayers that have been taught to the Catholic Church sometimes, and also just to have more courage, um, and even the readings today, it was really cool because the priest was talking about Abraham and he became Abraham, and it was because he said that big yes. He's like, I'm gonna make a nation out of your descendants. I'm probably butchering what was said, but he basically kind of told us that, because of his yes, we are here at church today because of the Israelites, the land of Judah, then Jesus, and then Christianity, and then we're here at church. And it's such a good reminder that this big yes that feels really scary can impact so many lives. And I think the beauty of it too is remembering that we do not have to know. Even in heaven, even if we don't know in heaven, because I think we're going to be, hopefully, we're going to be so mesmerized by His love in paradise that that's not even going to matter. Hopefully. Because, at least for me, I know sometimes I like to see results, I like to see change, and when I don't see it, I get frustrated. Um,
yeah.
so I would just say thank you so much, David, for taking it on. Do you think, is there any date that you feel a bit discouraged or you kind of want to pass on this role to somebody else?
Sometimes, I mean, right now we're in the middle of the Lenten campaign, and so it's cold. We do this twice a year. We do it in October, in the fall, and we do it right now. Naturally, there are fewer people who come out during the Lenten campaign just because it's so cold, and we have our numbers are higher in the fall. So in the past, I would get discouraged by that, but right now, I'm, you know, I don't allow myself to get so discouraged, and I find that if I don't worry about it, it seems to work out. Even just today, how many people came out today? We had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We had 5 people coming out today. All across this morning. So and I'm happy with that.
Praise be to God. Thank you so much, David. It has been a joy, and I really hope that joy is transferred to all the listeners, and that again, our little yes can be turned into multiplication of yeses. Is there any last words you would like to say, David?
Well, just pray. Even if you can't come and pray outside of an abortion clinic, just pray. Pray for our priests, our bishops, our popes. Pray for an end to abortion, and pray for the women who find themselves in difficult situations.
Amen. Thank you, David. Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you for listening. And just a reminder, this is Via Rua program. God bless you all. Have a good day. Have a good night. God bless.
Thank you.
You have been listening to the program Via Rua, hosted by Anna Rivera here on Radio Maria Canada, a Catholic voice wherever you are.